In 1995, a man named MacArthur Wheeler walked into two banks in Pittsburgh, robbed them in broad daylight, and didn't wear a mask. Security cameras caught his face clearly from multiple angles in good lighting. Police arrested him within hours, and when they showed him the footage, he was genuinely stunned. He told them he had rubbed lemon juice on his skin before the robbery. He believed it would make him invisible to the cameras, the same way lemon juice can be used to write invisible ink on paper. He wasn't lying to the police. He wasn't on drugs. He simply believed it completely, right up until the moment the evidence proved him wrong on tape. You've met a smaller version of MacArthur Wheeler. Maybe it was a coworker who argued with a doctor about a diagnosis after reading one article the night before. Maybe it was a friend who was certain he could fix the plumbing himself, and now the two of you are standing in 2 inches of water in the kitchen. Maybe, if you're honest, it was you. Not with lemon juice, with something smaller. A moment you were completely sure you were right, said so out loud, in front of people, and later found out you weren't even close. Or think about the last time you scrolled through comments under a news article about something technical, like interest rates, or vaccine data, or a court ruling. Somewhere in that thread is a person writing 3 confident paragraphs, no hedging, no "I could be wrong here," just certainty, about a subject they encountered for the first time 20 minutes ago. And somewhere else in that same thread is someone with an actual background in the subject, writing something far more careful, full of qualifiers, because the more they know, the more exceptions and gray areas they can see. You've probably noticed this pattern without having a name for it. Now you're about to get one. So here's the question this video is going to answer. Why do the people who understand the least about a subject often feel the most certain about it? And why does that certainty grow stronger, not weaker, the further someone is from actually knowing what they're talking about? This is Wiser You, and this channel exists to take strange, sometimes uncomfortable corners of human psychology and make them make sense. Today, we're looking at overconfidence. Not the loud, chest-puffing kind you can spot from across the room, the quiet kind. The kind that convinces perfectly normal, well-meaning people they've mastered something they've barely touched. If you've ever wondered why some of the least informed people in a room are also the loudest, or why you've occasionally been one of them without realizing it, this video is for you. By the end, you'll understand exactly why this happens in the brain. You'll be able to catch it in yourself in real time, and you'll walk away with a set of tools to stop it before it costs you something. Because it does cost you something. A job offer, a friendship, a decision you can't take back. Let's start with what most people get wrong about this topic, because the common explanation is comfortable but incomplete. Most people hear confidently wrong and assume it's a character flaw, arrogance, ego, someone who simply refuses to admit fault. That explanation feels satisfying because it lets you draw a clean line between yourself and the problem. Those people are arrogant, you think. I'm just careful. But that's not what the research shows, and it's not what's actually happening inside the brain when this occurs. In 1999, 2 psychologists named David Dunning and Dunning-Kruger ran a series of studies at Cornell University. They tested people on logic, grammar, and even humor, and after each test, they asked participants to guess how well they had done compared to everyone else in the room. The pattern that showed up was almost identical across every single test. The people who scored in the bottom quarter, the ones who did the worst, consistently guessed they had scored above average, not by a small margin either, by a lot. The people who scored the highest, on the other hand, tended to slightly underestimate themselves because they assumed a test that felt easy to them must have felt just as easy to everyone else. The lowest scoring group in these studies wasn't guessing they'd done okay. Many of them guessed they had landed in the top half, sometimes the top third, while sitting in the bottom 25% the entire time. That's not a small miscalculation. That's a near total disconnect between performance and self-perception, and it showed up again and again across different subjects, different groups of participants, and different versions of the test. This pattern is now widely known as the Dunning-Kruger Effect, and here's the part that changes how you should think about it. It isn't that unskilled people are lying or being stubborn or refusing to accept reality, it's that the specific skill required to do a task well is often the exact same skill required to judge how well you're doing it. Researchers describe this as a metacognitive deficit, which simply means a gap in your ability to think clearly about your own thinking. If you don't know the rules of grammar, you don't just write weaker sentences, you also lose the very tool you would need to notice your sentences are wrong. The incompetence and the blindness to that incompetence come from the same missing piece, which is why the two nearly always travel together. Picture it this way. Imagine you're standing in a dark room and someone asks you how dark the room actually is. If you have a flashlight, you can sweep it around, see how far the light reaches, and judge the darkness with real accuracy. But if you have no flashlight at all, you can't see enough to know what you're even missing. You might honestly believe the room is well lit simply because you have nothing to compare it to. That flashlight is competence. Without it, you're not just standing in the dark, you don't know you're standing in the dark. And that's the entire problem in one image. Here's a line worth remembering from this video. The most dangerous kind of ignorance isn't knowing nothing at all, it's knowing just enough to feel finished. A small amount of knowledge hands you a working vocabulary, a handful of confident sentences, and the feeling of understanding, all without giving you enough exposure to the subject to see how much is still missing underneath. Before we go further, it's worth pausing on why this feels so good in the moment, because that's part of what keeps it going. Certainty isn't just a belief, it's a feeling, and it's a pleasant one. Psychologists who study decision-making have found that reaching a firm conclusion, any conclusion, reduces the mental effort of continuing to weigh evidence, and your brain treats that reduction in effort as a small reward. Doubt takes energy. Certainty is a rest stop. So even when someone is wrong, the relief of feeling done thinking about a problem can feel almost identical to the satisfaction of actually solving it. That's part of why confidently wrong people don't seem anxious or uncertain from the outside. They're not performing confidence, they're genuinely experiencing the same mental comfort a correct answer would give them, which is exactly what makes the whole thing so hard to catch from the inside. Now, let's go deeper into why this happens, because there isn't one single cause, there are four. And once you learn to spot them, you'll start noticing this pattern everywhere, in yourself included. The first cause is that early competence feels identical to real competence, even though it isn't. When you first start learning something new, your confidence climbs fast, often faster than your actual skill does. You read a few articles about nutrition, and suddenly you have strong opinions about everyone's diet. You watch a handful of videos about investing, and you're sure you found a strategy that professionals somehow missed. Psychologists sometimes call this early stage the peak of Mount Stupid, an informal but genuinely useful way to describe it. Your knowledge at that point is real, but shallow, and shallow knowledge feels surprisingly solid from the inside, because you haven't yet run into the exceptions, the edge cases, and the nuance that experts spend years discovering the hard way. Picture someone who just finished a single weekend course on home electrical wiring, standing in their garage, wire stripper in hand, feeling completely ready to rewire a light switch by themselves. They're not lying to themselves, they simply haven't been exposed yet to the 50 different ways that job can go wrong, because nobody has shown them. Or picture a new manager, 6 weeks into the job, who just read one popular book on leadership and now feels ready to overhaul the entire team's workflow. He's not being reckless on purpose, he hasn't yet lived through the version of that plan falling apart, the version experienced managers have usually lived through 2 or 3 times, which is exactly what taught them to move slower. The second cause is the feedback loop most people live inside without ever noticing it. Confidence doesn't grow in a vacuum. It grows based on the reactions you get from the people around you, and most people are surrounded by others who either don't know enough to correct them or don't want the social friction of doing it. Think about a group chat where someone shares a confident, wrong opinion about history or health or money. Instead of pushback, they get a few thumbs-up reactions and a quick, "That's so true," from a friend who doesn't know the details either. Nobody in that chat is being malicious. It's simply easier to agree than to challenge someone you like. Over months and years, that pattern repeats hundreds of times, and every unchallenged, confident statement acts like a small deposit into a bank account of false certainty. No single person decided to mislead anyone. The system just quietly rewarded confidence and never once demanded accuracy in return. This same loop plays out at work too. Picture an employee who gives a confident, slightly off answer in a meeting, and because nobody wants to be the one who publicly corrects a colleague, the moment passes without pushback. That employee walks out of the meeting having just received silent proof in their own mind that they were right. They weren't. Nobody happened to say so, and silence is very easy to mistake for agreement. The third cause is one most people never consider, and it's called the halo effect bleeding across domains. If someone is genuinely skilled or successful in one area of life, like their career or a sport they've played for years, they and everyone around them often assume that competence must transfer to unrelated areas too. A brilliant surgeon isn't automatically qualified to give financial advice, but patients, and sometimes the surgeon himself, can start treating his medical authority as if it applies everywhere. This is why you'll see successful actors giving confident opinions about vaccine science, or wealthy entrepreneurs speaking with total certainty about nutrition or geopolitics. Success in one narrow lane creates a feeling of general intelligence that doesn't actually exist, and other people reinforce it by assuming that if someone is impressive in one way, they must be impressive in most ways. You can spot this same pattern in far smaller everyday settings too. The relative who's genuinely great at fixing cars and starts confidently diagnosing everyone's medical symptoms at dinner. The friend who's excellent at her job in marketing and suddenly certain she understands macroeconomics because the two fields both involve numbers and persuasion. The skill in the first lane is real, the confidence in the second lane is borrowed, and borrowed confidence rarely comes with the caution that earned confidence does. The fourth cause is newer, and it's the one making all of this worse at scale. Algorithms on social platforms are built to maximize engagement, not accuracy, which means confident, simple, emotionally charged claims spread faster than careful, hedged, complicated ones. A doctor explaining a nuanced medical finding with 5 caveats gets far less reach than someone who has no medical training at all, making a bold claim with total certainty. The platform isn't checking who's correct, it's checking who gets clicked on, and certainty gets clicked on far more reliably than nuance does. So the loudest, most confident voice in any given online conversation is frequently not the most knowledgeable one. It's the one least burdened by the doubt that real expertise usually brings with it. And this creates a strange backwards kind of education system. Instead of learning a topic from the people who've spent decades on it, most people now absorb their first impression of a subject from whoever's video or post happened to reach them first, and that first impression tends to stick even after better information arrives later. Psychologists call this an anchoring effect, meaning the first piece of information you receive on a topic quietly sets the baseline everything after it gets measured against, even when that first piece turns out to be wrong. Now, here's where this stops being an interesting psychology fact and starts carrying real weight. When this pattern goes unaddressed in a person or across an entire group, the consequences build quietly and then all at once. In relationships, one partner's unshakable certainty about being right in every disagreement slowly erodes the other partner's willingness to speak up at all, because what's the point of raising a concern with someone who has already decided they know better? In workplaces, the person who speaks with the most confidence in a meeting often gets listened to more than the person who has actually done the research, which means teams end up making decisions based on tone instead of substance, and the quietest, most accurate voice in the room gets overruled. On a larger scale, entire communities can organize around confidently wrong information, whether it's about a health treatment, a financial scheme, or a political claim, because certainty is contagious in a way that careful doubt simply isn't. And in parenting, a parent who's confidently certain about a single approach to raising kids without ever checking it against evidence or other perspectives can pass that same unchecked certainty on to their children, who grow up believing confidence itself is proof of being right, rather than something that has to be earned separately every time. And personally, for the overconfident individual themselves, the cost shows up later and harder than expected. A confidently wrong business decision doesn't just fail, it fails after the person has already convinced investors, employees, or family members to trust the plan, which means the fallout lands on more than just them. There's a slower, quieter cost too, one that's easy to miss. Every time someone reaches a confident conclusion without actually testing it, they lose a small chance to learn something true. Multiply that across a decade, and you end up with 2 very different people who started at the same place. One person kept getting quietly corrected, adjusted, and grew sharper each year without even noticing the process. The other person never got corrected, never adjusted, and simply got louder, mistaking the accumulation of unchallenged opinions for the accumulation of actual knowledge. So, if unchecked overconfidence quietly damages relationships, careers, and even the information an entire community trusts, the real question becomes what you actually do about it, not as a society, as you, individually, starting today. That's what the rest of this video is for.
Step 1 is to deliberately seek out disconfirming feedback, not confirming feedback. Most people, without realizing it, ask questions designed to produce agreement. "Doesn't this sound right to you?" invites a yes almost automatically. Instead, ask a specific person you trust a more precise version of that question. Try something like, "What's the strongest argument against what I just said?" That single sentence pulls the other person out of polite agreement mode and into honest evaluation mode. And it's one of the fastest ways to expose a blind spot before it costs you something real. Step 2 is to build what researchers call a calibration habit. This means before you make a prediction or state a confident claim, you write down not just your answer, but your confidence level as a percentage. "I'm 80% sure this project will finish on time." Then later, you go back and check. Were you actually right 80% of the times you said 80%? Most people who try this discover their confidence and their accuracy don't match at all. And that gap becomes incredibly useful information because it shows you exactly where your gut feeling can and can't be trusted yet. You don't need a spreadsheet to start. A single note on your phone titled Predictions is enough. Write the claim, write the percentage, write the date, and check back in a month. 3 or 4 entries in, most people are surprised by what they find. Step 3 is to treat the beginning of learning something new as the most dangerous phase, not the safest one. The moment you feel like you've got it, pause and ask yourself a specific question. Have I actually seen this go wrong yet? If you haven't personally watched something fail, been corrected by someone more experienced, or run into a case that broke your simple understanding of it, you're probably still standing on Mount Stupid, even if it doesn't feel that way from up there. A useful practical version of this, before acting on new knowledge in something that actually matters, like a health decision or a financial move, find one person who has been doing that specific thing for at least 5 years and ask them one question. What's the biggest mistake you see beginners make with this? Their answer will almost always reveal a blind spot you didn't know you had. Step 4 is to reward the people around you for disagreeing with you instead of just tolerating it. If a coworker or a friend pushes back on something you said and you respond out loud in front of others with something like, "You're right, I hadn't thought about that," you're actively training the people around you to keep giving you honest feedback instead of quiet agreement. Most people do the opposite without noticing, getting defensive just often enough that everyone around them quietly learns it isn't worth the friction of correcting them anymore. Step 5 is to check your confidence specifically against how much it's actually been tested by the world outside your own head. Ask yourself 2 different questions instead of just one. Not only, how sure am I, but has anyone with more experience than me pushed back on this idea and I still came out believing it? A belief that has survived real scrutiny from someone more knowledgeable is worth far more than a belief that has only ever survived inside your own thinking, uncontested. Before you state something with total certainty this week, whether it's in a meeting, a group chat, or an argument with a partner, try running it through one filter first. Have I actually tested this, or have I just never been challenged on it? Those are 2 very different kinds of confidence, and only one of them deserves the weight you're about to give it. None of this means you should doubt everything you know or walk around paralyzed by uncertainty. That's its own trap, and it's just as unhelpful as the overconfidence this video is describing. Someone who questions every single thought they have doesn't become wiser. They become unable to act at all, and a life spent second-guessing every decision is its own kind of prison. The goal was never less confidence. It's confidence that's actually earned, built on evidence instead of the comfortable feeling of having an opinion. The people who end up genuinely knowledgeable in something aren't the ones who never felt sure of themselves early on. Every expert climbed Mount Stupid at some point too. The surgeon was once a first-year student who overestimated what she understood about the human body. The seasoned investor once made a confident, uninformed trade that lost money for reasons he couldn't have named at the time. What separates them from everyone else isn't that they skipped the overconfident phase. Nobody skips it. It's that they stayed curious enough, past that early certainty, to keep discovering what they were still missing, one correction at a time, for years, long after the initial rush of feeling like they understood something had worn off. So here's a question worth sitting with after this video ends. Where in your life are you standing on Mount Stupid right now, feeling completely sure of yourself, without realizing you haven't yet been shown the part that would change your mind? Tell us in the comments, honestly, one topic where you've caught yourself being confidently wrong before. Not to embarrass yourself, because everyone watching this video has won, and naming it out loud is the first real step to catching it next time. Read a few of the other comments too. You'll probably notice the same pattern showing up in completely different areas of life, from parenting to money to relationships, which is the clearest proof that this isn't about being smart or stupid at all. It's about a blind spot every single brain shares, and the only real defense against it is staying curious enough to keep checking your own certainty against the world outside your head. If this video helped you see your own thinking a little differently, subscribe to Wiser You. We break down the psychology behind why people think, feel, and act the way they do every week, and there's a lot more where this came from. This has been Wiser You. Stay curious.